Hello everyone, it's Raza Van Werder from the University of Mother God Church, and I decided to read to you from one of my books because the last few videos have been hard on me. I mean, they've been rather difficult to talk about some of these painful experiences of my life. And my first three videos, which were very gut-wrenching, would not upload. So I made 3 that went for nothing, and then I made 5 that one of them uploaded already, so I think the rest will, so we'll be safe there. So I decided to read to you from one of my books because that'll be easier on my psyche, because I'm a little bit mentally worn out from on the attainment of the divine stigmata by me, on the attainment of the divine stigmata. And this is the picture on the back. This is me posing, and a lady and a man from Associated Press came to interview me about stripping for God, and I was dressed in a very mournful manner, all in black, and I was holding the cross. And I was thinking of Jesus, and I literally began to cry. And they took the picture, so it was actually a really good picture to depict the divine stigmata, because the divine stigmata is sorrowful, oh so sorrowful. I think I will start with one chapter that I love. I wrote this chapter after, like a year after the divine stigmata. And believe me, when you have the stigmata, you know what poverty is. And when I say poverty, I don't mean not being able to pay your bills. I mean the poverty that Jesus suffered. Okay. And I love this writing. This is one of my most favorite things that I ever wrote. And it's called Spiritual Poverty as Taught by Our Lord Jesus Christ through His Life and Words. I use this picture. I did most of the work, to be honest with you. I have webmen that, help, but I do a lot of the work of the books. So this is my masterpiece on spiritual poverty. Preamble. Note: I showed this writing to several Catholic scholars, including a priest. They did not believe I wrote it, which to me is a testimony to how good it is. Follow me? Okay, here we go. The most amazing fact about our Lord's entire life is His poverty. The entire gospel is His labor of love in poverty. From His birth in the cave to His death on the cross, poverty. He emptied Himself. He reduced Himself for us, quote, "For I am a worm, but no man," unquote. If for no other reason than fear, we should imitate Him. All who love Him follow His example. Quote, "Take up your cross daily and follow me, and the greatest cross is poverty." Quote, oh, I'm going to sneeze. Excuse me. Maybe I won't. Quote, "What profit a man if he gains the whole world but loses his immortal soul?" Unquote. By the loss of poverty, man lost his immortal soul. The Lord came to earth to teach poverty. Redemption is the triumph of poverty. Man fell by wanting to be something of himself. By wanting to be something of himself, he lost God. God taught man how to empty himself so he could be one with God again. Poverty is a science that must be learned because all the tendencies work against it. If it were not so difficult, why would God have had to go to such lengths to teach it to us? There is a resistance to poverty, so that its attainment is the sheer force of the will that allows the supernatural to take place. God said to take up your cross daily and follow him. That means to reduce yourself daily and be like him. God is love, but God cannot work in a soul that is filled with self. God came to bring love, but where will he put it? There must be a place to put this love. Was there a place on earth for God to be born? Salvation is here, but how many are willing to receive it? What is the reason for this failure on man's part? The reason is this. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son. But man so loved the world that he stopped loving God. Explanation of the Holy Gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ according to his teachings on poverty. Chapter 1, Birth of Jesus. My children, come and see my birth. This is me writing, imagining Jesus talking. My children, come and see my birth, the lowliest, and yet I was a king. But my kingdom is not of this world, so this world did not welcome me. In chapter 2 of Luke, there is an explanation of my birth in a manger, a place usually kept for animals, in absolute poverty. Why was I so poor? Was it fitting for a king to be born in a manger? It was fitting because I wanted to teach you that a man's life does not consist of his possessions, and that God, who is no respecter of persons, will not judge you according to your rank in society. There you have at my birth two great lessons. Don't care about the things you have in the world. Don't care about who you are in the eyes of the world. I had nowhere to lay my head when Mary and Joseph came to Bethlehem, where it was destined that I be born. The world did not welcome me. There were only a few wise men who welcomed me, those who came from the east, and the shepherds nearby. These men were wise because God hides himself from the proud and reveals himself to the little ones. Excuse me. I brought peace to the men of good will, but the wicked found only alarm at my coming. King Herod from the first wanted to kill me, and he typifies those of the world who live for the world, and therefore the things of God are a threat to them. In Matthew chapter 2 is described how my mother and foster father, had to flee into exile to escape my being killed. Quote, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream, saying, arise, and take the child and his mother, and flee to Egypt, and remain there until I tell you, for Herod is going to search for the child to destroy him. And he arose, and took the child and his mother by night, and departed for Egypt. Matthew 2:13-14. Consider then the poverty of my parents who had to go to Bethlehem immediately when called to go on a journey of great discomfort and danger, and after a long and tiresome trip, having nowhere to lay our heads. And this is not a strange place, but the hometown of Joseph, where he should have been welcomed with open arms. And you, my children, complain when you are not welcomed or accepted. Soon after that, mother and father had to go into exile to live with idolaters, heathens, pagans, and lost Jews, to live in abject poverty, until Joseph was told to bring me back. In the desolation of Egypt, our family often had not enough to eat, and yet we would not use the power of God to alleviate our sufferings. And you, my children, petition God day and night for your comfort and happiness in earthly terms. In contrast to your clamors for earthly things, consider the righteous life of John the Baptist. It is described in Luke how my mother visited his mother while we were both still in their wombs. Luke 1:36-80. At this time I sanctified John, so he would be born without original sin. Think of how he lived later on in the desert all alone, on locusts and wild honey, without human contact or alleviation, without human support. Consider how strong he became, being led by the Spirit of God and without thought of human respect or opinion. It was such a man as he who both was prepared and therefore could prepare others for my coming. Are you like him, or do you fear human respect? Do you fear loneliness and pain, both outward and inward? Or can you stand alone, with no support but the Spirit of God in you? Just before going to my desert fast, I myself was baptized by John to show you, my children, how important this sacrament is, where the life of God begins in you and you are born of the Spirit. I went through all the requirements of normal everyday life, as well as complying with all the laws of religion throughout my earthly life. I also suffered and bore within myself much more than was necessary to obtain your salvation. I chose to go through all this because I came not as God in his almighty power, but as a poor and humble servant, because that is the lesson you, my children, needed to learn. Having lifted yourself in sinful pride, there was no way you could rise again until you had humbled yourselves to the dust. I had to teach you that humility. Chapter 2. Jesus fast in the desert. If you would wish to come with me, deny yourself, take up your cross and follow me. Matthew 16:24. My children, if you want to follow me, you must prepare yourselves by mortification and suffering, lest on the way of your spiritual journey you fall. In my desert fast I acquired all the graces necessary for you to live the ascetic and contemplative life, as well as the ability to bear with equal heart the applause and persecution of men. If you wish to draw upon these graces I merited for you, go into seclusion and take nothing with you that you don't need. At this point I want you to learn to live day by day without worry about the future, but only follow me. I do not expect all of you to literally follow in my footsteps, but in the spirit of those footsteps. Follow me as best you can, living alone if possible, and staying within yourself. Take no human alleviation you don't need, living in the simple and mortified way, in the way of silence and religious seclusion. At this time, consider your whole life and what is to come as a sacrifice to me. Consecrate yourself to me wholly, holding nothing back, either physical or spiritual, and give me all your hopes and dreams. To be continued.